Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Mess. So you're going to have what might be the most exciting video I'm going to make for the month of December. It's going to be a very big explanation video exactly how this all worked, but Mausimum, the maker of ShaderGlass, has now released ShaderBeam, which is a CRT Beam emulator for your PC. And when I say in practice, when you're actually on a high refresh monitor, something like my LG C4 OLED, this thing is absolutely stunning. Honestly, I've never seen anything quite like it in practice, and I think it's absolutely going to be the future of retro gaming and even modern gaming once you actually get used to using it. Before we get too far involved though, do me a huge favor down below, hit like and subscribe and ring that notification bell, definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, I got a Patreon link down below as well. And right now I'm just showing you a little bit of footage of ShaderGlass because that is what Mausimum is known for. I've done multiple videos on this topic and it's absolutely outstanding exactly what ShaderGlass does, and ShaderBeam is no different even if it's completely different. So this is Mausimum's own example, and I will leave a link to his YouTube channel in the description below, and you will see here the emulation of a CRT electron beam actually drawing an image across the screen. That is how these old televisions worked versus your modern flat panels, which is basically displaying an image all at once and then moving over 60, 120, or even 240 times per second. And this is the type of thing, your eye cannot actually see this, even though it can. I know that's a very strange thing to say, but your brain is basically putting in a full image, even if your eye might be able to detect the actual draw distance. And that's something that we deal with a lot of time in filmmaking, basically tricking people into thinking a static image is actually moving just based upon how you move it around the screen. It is a very complex topic, but honestly, when you see a CRT television, you get that quote-unquote CRT vibe. That's what ShaderBeam is trying to emulate here. And you'll see that they are using the Blur Buster simulation of this as well, so it is kind of a collaborative effort. But honestly, it's one of those things, this is very difficult to actually showcase on YouTube, because I don't have an option to put up a 240 frame per second video, and you probably aren't watching it on that type of screen. But honestly, once you actually see this on a monitor that can support it, you're going to be 100% blown away. You'll see that you need at least a 100Hz refresh monitor, 240 or more is definitely recommended. And that's why, at least in my footage, when you watch a CRT television, that flicker is the electron beam sweeping across the screen 60 frames per second to draw an image. Now, I use a cinema camera that works in degrees for the actual shutter speed. It is a shutter angle, so I don't have the ability to go and actually get rid of this flicker on my camera because it's never meant to do that. And it's one of those things, in the future, I will definitely shoot at 240 frames per second on my cinema camera, my screen in my living room. But right now, my wife and I are in the process of moving, and about an hour and a half to 2 hours after this video gets finished, we're going to be at the bank sending the wire transfer in for our home purchase, and it's going to be the single most amount of money I've spent in a day, so wish me luck on that one. And just so you know, this is different than BFI or black frame insertion. Both technologies are very interesting, and something like the RetroTink 4K can do that, but this is actually emulating how the screen would draw. And it's one of those things, I clearly own a lot of CRT televisions. I've got PVMs, I've got CRTs, and I've got VGA monitors, but stuff like this is going to keep the dream alive for a lot more people if you don't want to invest in those TVs. And trust me, in 15, 20, 30 years, they're just going to keep getting rarer and rarer because they're going to get more and more expensive, because unfortunately they're definitely not making any CRTs anymore. But to be able to pull this off, you need something that has a high refresh rate. I've been using the LG C4, just playing around with this in the last 24 hours, and it has been absolutely stunning. But right now you're watching a video where I did the ultimate 4K gaming setup for my house, and this thing is basically completely ripped apart now outside of the television, because it's soon going to be an entirely different location. So get ready to watch a lot of different fun videos on the new setup build as well. And that is the fun thing about something like ShaderBeam. You're getting about as close as you possibly can to the look of a CRT television, at least in its motion clarity and cadence than you can possibly get. And that is going to be absolutely outstanding because LGs and other OLED makers right now are making some incredible televisions that are amazing for retro gaming, especially scaled. But being able to use something like ShaderBeam on Windows is going to make it feel like you're actually watching a gigantic, very flat CRT television and not something like an OLED panel. But just be aware that this is still early technology, and ShaderBeam is basically at 0.1 as far as the version is concerned, so there's going to be a lot more improvements coming up. But you'll see here on the Blur Buster's website, it explains more, and I will leave a link to that in the description below so you can understand how this works. You're going to see here again, they recommend 240 Hz plus displays, so you kind of want to have a very high refresh rate monitor. But if you're watching this channel and you're into gaming, odds are you're probably going to have that and you're going to be totally fine. Although weirdly enough, for my production setup, my monitors are just basically 60 Hz ultra wides with a nice color calibration for them because it is for work. And you'll see here on the actual GitHub page on the requirements, you also need to be on Windows 10 or 11. 11 is recommended. And if you have a CPU that actually has an iGPU inside of it, you can use that for the emulation as well. Just be aware that this can sometimes create flashing images, so you have been warned about that. There's going to be a lot of documentation on the performance tips on how to get the best out of this. This is going to require a high touch setup. This is not something that you double click the executable and automatically works out of the box. It will work, but this is the type of thing, at least at its current stage, that you're going to be playing around with and fiddling with. But honestly, as far as retro gaming is concerned, a lot of us like the actual setup process, maybe even more so than the end result. There's going to be a ton of stuff here that you can play around with, but definitely read every single bit of information on the GitHub page. If you don't read it, you're going to have a quote-unquote bad time. You just won't get the best result out of something like ShaderBeam. And trust me, when you actually get that set up, it's going to be amazing. And like I said, if your CPU has that iGPU inside of it, something like an Intel K series or the equivalent for AMD, you can set it to actually render onto that GPU, giving you an even better result. But the interesting thing is, and the difficult thing is, on YouTube right now, I have this thing running the actual program, but you're not going to be able to see it because I'm only able to really broadcast this video at 60 frames per second versus plugging in my 240 Hz panel in my office. Yeah, that's when I can actually see the effect. So it's one of those things, you're just going to have to take my word for it. Seeing it is believing it. The magic happens when you're on that high refresh rate monitor. Because again, when we go to some of the Blur Busters examples, you'll see here how that basically draws down the screen. That's exactly how a CRT television would draw the image, except it is being emulated because obviously there is not an electron beam inside of your LCD monitor, although that would be a fun thing. And I'm really surprised by this point in time, some very rich person hasn't decided to start a new CRT factory just to give us stuff like this. Because trust me, PVMs are not being made anymore, and if you want to buy one, they are incredibly expensive these days, unfortunately. I have 3, and I basically got 2 for free and 1 for $50, and I totally understand. I am 100% lucky, and that's never going to happen again. So when these things break, I'm talking 4 figures to replace them one day. And even though I am what I would call a purist, and that really means I am an idiot, because I just did say we're spending more money today than I've ever spent in my life to pay for the entire closing costs of this house. If all 3 of my PVMs break tomorrow, I'm just not going to be buying them anytime soon, because that mortgage is going to be spicy, as is the down payment. But you'll see here again, there's a lot of visual examples of exactly how this technology works, and it's one of those things, once you actually see it in front of you, you're going to be absolutely blown away by just how well this thing actually goes. Just be aware that it is Windows 10 or 11 now, so I do have this library footage of Astrobot on PlayStation 5. This is going to be for your PC, so anything that runs on your PC, modern games, retro games, anything you want is going to work. And as you actually get into the program here, you're going to have a decent amount of options as well, but trust me, go through the overall GitHub documentation. If you really want to see a tutorial on ShaderBeam, leave me a comment down below, but it's going to take me some time because right now I am spending more time taking apart my office and gaming setup than I am putting it together because again, I will be moving very shortly into a brand new house. But if this is something you want to get a tutorial on, I will definitely make it in the future, so leave me that comment down below. But honestly, this program is probably going to update pretty quickly, so I might wait a revision or 2 before I actually do that tutorial, because things are definitely subject to change. But again, using Mausimum's example here, this is how a CRT television would draw an image, and now you're getting that emulation on Windows 10 and 11, and all you need to do is go over to GitHub, download the executable from the Releases tab, and start playing around with it. Again, it's going to be a pretty heavy setup, but just go ahead and articulate the settings based upon the directions on GitHub, and when you think the look you have is appealing, that is the right answer. This is one of those things that is very granular, and whatever looks good to you is going to be the quote-unquote right thing to do. And it's one of those things, Mausimum keeps innovating and bringing us amazing applications. ShaderGlass is basically the de facto best thing you can have on your PC for getting that retro look. Sure, there's scalers like RetroTink 4K as well as the more 4K that are going to have filters, but those are for the original hardware. ShaderGlass and ShaderBeam are just executables on your PC to give you that retro gaming look and aesthetic for absolutely free. And Mausimum is single-handedly doing this stuff just to make us happy, and I always love celebrating that. And it's one of those coolest things. I didn't plan on making any videos until after the new year, but honestly, when I saw this thing come out, I had to play with it and I realized you have to know about this. So definitely check ShaderBeam out. It is a 10 out of 10 amazing idea using the Blurbuster CRT emulation to be able to have this work on your Windows machine. If you haven't played with ShaderGlass yet, I can't stress enough, that one is incredible as well. So Mausimum, you definitely won December as far as amazing things I've never seen, and I hope you guys enjoyed the video. See you next time. Bye-bye.